the idea of improving your coaching skills is an important issue. When we look at this idea of improving your coaching skills, I'd really like to challenge everybody on the call here today to look at it in the terms of industrial strength coaching. My guess is everybody on this call would have very good coaching skills. You'd come at this webinar with the idea that you're engaged in coaching. You probably have really seasoned coaching skills. My encouragement today is to look at this 30 to 40-minute conversation that we're going to have here today as an opportunity to you to enhance that, to lift your game as a coach. When we look at this idea of coaching, there's three things I'd like to focus on today. One is your role as a coach. Really, this starts with your perspective. What do you see coaching as all about? Next, I'd like to introduce to you three basic but very potent skills that as you enhance these skills as a coach, everything changes. Everything changes in your coaching. Lastly, I'd like to share with you an approach, a simple, step-by-step approach that is called development-based coaching that also can help you change the potency of your coaching. So to start, I'd like to look at this idea of your perspective. I'd like to ask you the question, as a coach, who are you? What do you see yourself as when you see yourself and you ask yourself that question, as a coach, who are you? Many of us actually have this notion that the great coaches are set apart from the rest of us in some way. They are these special people, almost monk-like in their approach to life. I would suggest not. These wonderful people have a place in our society, in our civilization, and influence us in many ways. But I would suggest this is not the image of the coach today, especially in our organizations. Secondly, another image that often comes to mind is the wild-eyed sports coach. Cheerleading, criticizing, cajoling. This also, I believe, is a poor metaphor and a poor image for those of us who are inside organizations and look to improve and impact other people. Often, we look at this idea of a coach as some great sage, some almost wizard-like person that has this brilliance to dole out to us, that has this answer to the universe, to our jobs, to our career, whatever it might be. But they come at coaching with some special wisdom or vision or viewpoint of the world. Again, I would suggest that this is not the metaphor for the great coaches in our organizations today. Quite frankly, the great coaches are simple, ordinary people like you and me. They are people who will come alongside another person and be helpful in some way. And they have the willingness and courage to engage in conversations and relationships that are somehow special. The idea of coaching starts with the idea that we as normal, caring people can influence other people who are stuck. And when I say stuck, I don't mean that they are unwell. I mean we're all stuck to some degree. We are where we are. We are where we are in terms of opportunities. We are where we are in terms of our jobs, our careers, our performance. And these wonderful coach-like men and women come alongside us, and through the conversations they have with us, and through the relationships they have with us, something changes. So I'd really encourage everybody on this call to see yourselves very much as that person. Are you able to come alongside another person and have the kind of conversations and relationships to really make an impact, really make an influence? So as I'd mentioned earlier, there are some skills that I would encourage you to look at, and these are skills that will make you very, very potent as a coach, and they're also skills that we all can do. We all can do this. Managers, leaders, individual contributors, professional coaches, these are the things that we all need to enhance to improve our toolkit. Here they are. How do you listen like a coach, think like a coach, and speak like a coach? There are many interpersonal skills, relational skills, communication skills, analytical skills that coaches need. For the purpose of the call here today, what I would encourage you to do is to focus on these three elements. Can you listen in a different kind of a way? Can you think in a different kind of a way? And can you speak in a different kind of a way? Because the great coaches all do. They listen differently, they think differently, and they speak differently. My hope is that I can share some perspectives with you today and give you maybe some hints in terms of how you can lift your game on all of these elements. So let's first of all start with this idea of how we listen. How do you listen like a coach? To really understand this, I think what we have to do is to reflect on how do we usually listen to other people. We listen to other people to try to understand what they're saying and to see if it's important to us. Is it interesting? Is it entertaining? Is it important to me personally in some way? And when I answer those questions, then I also answer the question, do I care? Do I care enough to really listen to that person? Because is it important to me? Coaches do not listen that way. Coaches listen in an entirely different way. They're listening for what is important to the other person. Now, there's nothing wrong with listening to what's important for you. This is how we exist. This is how we interact with humans in organizations, in societies, in families. We listen to what's important to us. Coaches listen differently. They listen to what is important to the other person. And this is difficult. I love this quote. So when you are listening to somebody completely, attentively, then you are listening not only to the words, but also to the feeling of what is being conveyed, to the whole of it, not a part of it. This is how coaches listen. Here are some pointers. These are 6 things I would encourage you to think about in terms of how you really listen to another person. I will tell you this. If you practice these 6 things, everything will change, and people will know. First and foremost, coaches listen for values. They listen for passions. They listen for what is really important to the other person. Secondly, they listen for what you're really good at. They listen for your strengths, your gifts, your talents. Thirdly, they listen to where you want to go. What are your aspirations? What are your biggest ambitions? What's next for you? Next, they listen for emotions. What makes your emotions drive us? What makes you happy, sad, glad, mad? Then they also listen for inconsistencies. As they're listening, where do the music and the words not go together? What just really doesn't make sense to them? And then lastly, they listen for what's missing. They're listening for what they're not hearing. Think about this. So look at this list here just for a moment. If you really were the kind of person that when you sat with somebody, you listened for what was really important to them. You listened for what was special about them. You listened for where they really wanted to go. And you listened for things that really didn't make sense to you, and you could share this back. This is how coaches listen. So then secondly, how do you think like a coach? Thinking like a coach requires us to think differently. But I can tell you this, it takes effort. It is not easy. Here's a very rarely quoted quote from Dr. King. Rarely do we find men who willingly engage in hard, solid thinking. There's an almost universal quest for easy answers and half-baked solutions. Nothing pains some people more than having to think. When we invest in that hard thinking with somebody else, this is when we're at our best as coaches. Proof of Dr. King's quote here is any look in any bookstore. All kinds of light reading, pop psychology, the easy answers. Coaches go for the hard thinking and are prepared for that journey. It does take effort. So how do you think like a coach? Well, it starts with putting yourself in a subservient position, looking and thinking not about you, not about your values, and quite frankly, not even about your own opinion. This is hard because that's where we live in our minds most of the time. It's really trying to think in ways that are different for you as well, because you're the fresh eyes. You're the other mind, the other brain, the other thinking unit for this person. It's like they're able to strap this onto them to give them double the capability and to allow them to see things in a different way. So what do coaches think about? Coaches think about possibilities. What's next? What are the options? What are the different perspectives? What models do you know that might be helpful here? So when you look at most of our thinking is about making sense out of the world. It's about solving problems. It's about engaging in learning. Now, some of that is also part of the coaching process. But coaches suspend most of that so they can think differently in service of the person that they are coaching. The third skill I'd like you to consider is this idea of speaking like a coach. Coaches speak differently. Coaches use their communication skills, use language in a different kind of a way, and also do not speak when they have nothing to say. Another quote that I really love: "As it is the characteristic of great wits to say much in few words, so small wits seem to have the gift of speaking much and saying nothing." Small wits seem to have the gift of speaking much and saying nothing. I share this with you because many great coaches are very introverted. Many great coaches are quite quiet, in fact. I have a rule for myself personally as a coach. If I'm speaking more than 25% of the time in the conversation, I tend not to be coaching, or at least doing any good coaching. What happens is the world is, and the organizations are full of noise. They're full of the din of people talking and blather and all kinds of stuff being said. What we need to do in the coaching process is to focus only on those things that the other person needs to hear. Here are 4 things that really make a difference in terms of what we say as a coach. Number 1 is acknowledging the other person in some way. It is acknowledging them as a valuable, separate human being. Have them feel recognized in the conversation. As many of you would know, we can go through an entire day, week, month, year, career sometimes in an organization and never truly be acknowledged by somebody else. So coaches, the first thing we do is we acknowledge others. One of the most important tools, verbal tools we have as a coach, is the question. We ask questions that challenge. We ask questions that encourage. We ask questions that provoke. Are you doing your best work right now? What's the most exciting outcome you can imagine? What is the most potent first step you can take to change your job, your life, your project? The power of the question is very, very much something that's tapped into by the coach. The third aspect of what we talk about is we talk about that voice we hear in our mind. Now, we call it intuition, but essentially, if we think it, we say it. And we say it not to convince, we say it not to show the other person how brilliant we are, but we simply share these intuitions as they come to us as a gift to the other person. The great coaches will always share what we call a second conversation. If you're having a conversation with one person, this is the verbal conversation. When you have that second conversation going on in your mind, that's intuition. That's what coaches share. And lastly, the great coaches, if they have nothing to say, they say nothing. They recognize the power of silence. They recognize the power of reflection, contemplation, and it's not about them. So you recognize that the great coaches are often silent, and they will use silence in their coaching. In the wonderful book by Susan Scott, Fierce Conversations, she says, "Let silence do the heavy lifting." We, as coaches, cannot contribute to that din, that blather, that ongoing deluge of words in the organization that have no power, have no meaning. We give ourselves power in our speech when we employ silence and employ it frequently. So if I could move into the third aspect of the discussion I'd like to have with you today and introduce you to the idea of development-based coaching. If we look at this, we need to really reflect on, like, why do we coach at all? Like, why do we come alongside other people? Why do we engage in these conversations? Why do we engage in these relationships? I would assert that most times when we engage other people, especially people who have a problem, an opportunity in some way, we are there with the best of intentions to help them fix it, many times to fix it for them, to solve their problems, to help them, to comfort them, to assure them in some way. And quite frankly, these are a lot of things that managers and friends do. This is a way that we interact with other people on this in organizations, and quite frankly, we can be very helpful in these. This is not the job of the coaches, however. This may be the job of a friend. This may be the job of a manager. This may be the job of a colleague in some way. Coaches take a different approach. When you think about what a friend would say something like this: "I will always be there for you. You've probably heard that. You've probably said that many times. I'll always be there for you. This is what friends say. Coaches, we're not going to be there for you. And it's not that we don't care. It's simply that we are not going to be there for you. And our job is not to be there for you. Our job is to help you build a capability so we don't need to be there for you. Our job is to help you lift your game in some way so that you have talents, skills, processes, approach, mental attitude, whatever is necessary so you can solve your own problems. You can achieve your own challenges. I love this quote from C.S. Lewis. This is really about the inevitability of growth and development. The inevitability. It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It would be a jolly sight harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. We are like eggs at present. And you cannot go on indefinitely being just an ordinary decent egg. We must be hatched or go bad. We must be hatched or go bad. This is the role of the coach. We help people hatch. And here is the key. Great coaches have always invested in the person, not the issue. Invest in the person, not the issue. That's why it's often so hard for those of us who are line managers to coach the people we work with, because we're so invested in the issue and we want the thing fixed, we want the thing changed, we want the project moving, we want the bottom line improved in some way. Great coaches have always put the person as the priority. And interesting, they know this. When we invest in the person, not the issue, we are doing what I call development-based coaching. Here's 5 steps. Now, I recognize that we rarely take this 5-step linear approach to coaching, but I would like to share with you an idea about a discipline that focuses on the development of the person rather than investing always in the issue. And here are the 5 pieces of that. We affirm the person, we confront the facts, we explore possibilities, we encourage change, and we advance the action. First is we affirm the person. We let the person know in some way that they're not broken, they have full capability of growth and development, they have all the skills, gifts, and talents to change their situation, to seize the opportunity, to change their performance, to move up another level in the organization, to lead their project in a different kind of a way. It is through this affirmation that we create this foundation for the great coaching. Secondly, is we confront the facts. We care enough about that other person. We have the courage to talk about things that other people will not talk about. We care enough about that person to suffer the grief and pain of having to talk about the harsh realities. We all know who they are in the organizations. We call them truth tellers. Those people who seek out and talk about the truth, whatever the personal cost. Thirdly, great coaches are always explorers. They will look for what's the most exciting outcome the person can imagine. What is the scariest? What's the most fascinating thing ahead for the person? Think about exploration and coaching really as in many ways as synonymous. T.S. Eliot says, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Think about this from a coaching perspective. We shall not cease from exploration, and we arrive at the place, and we'll know the place for the first time. This is a theme and a backdrop for all great coaches. They look at this idea of exploration as synonymous with coaching. As opposed to trying to fix problems, they are explorers by nature. Fourthly, great coaches recognize that change and humanity are one and the same, that we can change. If we see ourselves at a different place, if we see our skills, our talents, our aspirations, we can change. Great coaches are encouragers of change. We tell people they can change. We also are very realistic about this. We recognize that people need to sacrifice, need to invest, need to commit, but we are facilitators of change. And lastly, without action taking place, coaching is just talk. The great coaches advance the action in some way. They ask us, what's going to be different? What are specifically you going to do about it? What is the most potent thing you can do at this point? So the last element of great coaching, particularly development coaching, tends to be some kind of a commitment to action. A great Buddha quote, an idea that is developed and put into action is more important than an idea that exists only as an idea. An idea that exists only as an idea. You'll know this. The great coaching you've received in your life, somebody somewhere challenged you to actually do something about this. It is really moving from that great intentions into action. So I would encourage you to look at your coaching in terms of what is your perspective. As this slide comes up, the last thing I wanted to share with you today is this idea that content is crucial. There's many great coaching books out there, many great coaching programs, but I would really encourage you to start with this idea that what's inside you in terms of your attitude, your skills, and your approach is paramount in coaching. Do you come to the coaching relationship with a full glass? We come to that coaching relationship with a full glass when we come with a perspective that recognizes that we are not a Buddhist monk. We are not a basketball coach. We are not a great sage that sits on top of the mountain. But we are simply another person that will come alongside somebody else and share with them our gifts of conversation and relationship. Secondly, we care enough about becoming a great coach that we will refine and polish and hone our skills. Our skills that allow us to listen differently. Our skills that allow us to think differently. And our skills that allow us to speak differently. And then lastly, we won't just see the conversation, the coaching conversation, as some wandering, meandering dialogue, but we'll see it as a conversation that moves us from the person through to exploring possibilities, through to confronting facts, through to crafting change and committing to something that is different. We see this coaching dialogue and relationship as something that results in the person being able to operate at a higher level. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to you today. Again, I pass along my regards from Jim Bono. When we look at this idea of coaching within an organization, we, I believe, are still just scratching the surface. What does it take to be a great coach? I would encourage you to consider this very much from a personal perspective, because if you're going to improve your coaching, it really needs to be something that is improving in yourself personally as well. On behalf of Bluepoint, I thank you for coming onto the webinar today. On the screen now, you'll see my telephone number and email address. I love to talk about coaching. I love to hear your perspectives. I'd be delighted to respond to any emails that are sent and take any calls that come my way. If there's anything that we can do at any time to help you in your coaching pursuits, please give us a call.